The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Saberic, and today I'm really excited. I've been doing this show now, Frankly Speaking, since November. Well, taping in November. Our first episode came out in December. This will be our 14th episode of Frankly Speaking, and the second one today regarding the sex industry. The sex trafficking industry, excuse me. And a couple months ago, I had a young lady representing an organization called Amira out of Boston, and her name was Stephanie Clark, and she focused mostly on rescuing like streetwalkers and hookers, leading them to Jesus. Today we have a young lady, Bonnie Gatchell, representing she's the director of Route 1 Ministry, also in the Boston area, but her focus is mainly on rescuing strippers, girls who strip dance in these clubs, and hopefully, prayerfully leading them to Jesus. So without any further ado, Bonnie, why don't you tell my TV audience a little bit about yourself and what is Route 1 Ministry all about?
Sure, yeah. My name is Bonnie Gatchell, as you said, and Route 1 is a nonprofit. We are under the Emmanuel Gospel Center, and the Emmanuel Gospel Center is a nonprofit that's been around in the city of Boston for 75 years. The main emphasis of Route 1 is to reach women who are exploited by the sex industry, and in particular, women in strip clubs. And the second part of what we do is to help train teams of women, Christian women, to enter strip clubs to build relationships with women. And I think very recently, a third part, which is I'm super excited about, is also bringing education to the church, bringing education to church leaders, to pastors, to people who work inside schools, may they be social workers or guidance counselors, to help them understand more fully the connection between trafficking and exploitation and women who work in the sex industry.
So also like on your brochures and your business card, you have mentioned Emmanuel Gospel Center and Abolitionist Network. What does that mean?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. So kind of as I just said, the Emmanuel Gospel Center houses us. They're our nonprofit house. They are a nonprofit in themselves. There's 25 different ministries that run under the Emmanuel Gospel Center, some that work with refugees, some that work with the homeless community, Boston Public Schools, and we do work with women exploited. The Abolitionist Network is another ministry at the Emmanuel Gospel Center who works with trafficking, and their main focus is more around education and equipping church leaders. And what do you do if a woman exploited walks through your church doors? How do you address that issue? So they're more our colleagues in working and resolving this issue.
And also, I think I'm not sure if you mentioned in your brochures, but it's definitely mentioned, I think, on your website, lovebyroute1.org, which is an excellent website, by the way, that you hold a master's in theology degree. Now, are you an ordained pastor?
I am on my way to being ordained. I will be ordained in October with the Evangelical Presbyterian Church.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and I locally attend Orchard Christian Fellowship in Londonderry.
Londonderry, New Hampshire.
Yep. So
that's quite a hike.
It's
you
a bit of
work
hike.
in Boston and you go to church in London.
I live and work in Boston, but There's not a lot of evangelical Presbyterian churches, and it's
Oh.
the one that I feel God has called me to be part of and to fellowship with. So it's the next closest one, and here we are.
Okay. One thing also on that website, I got to compliment you. On the front page, though, I guess the home page of that website, lovedbyroot1.org,
Yeah.
you have a YouTube video. I call it the cycle of exploitation. I think you mentioned that there.
Yeah.
You're telling a story of Teresa.
Yeah.
No, a couple of things about that. You did that out of Wellesley College in Boston,
Yeah.
like the Boston area. Now, granted, I think college girls definitely need to be aware and careful when they're
Sure.
dating and stuff like that, and they probably need to hear that message. But were you ever inspired to do that with like junior highs and high schools, to lecture like that and catch them before they can become strippers or?
Yeah. I actually would love to speak at any middle school, any high school that would have me in to speak. I think you're absolutely right. The age range of women in the sex industry is age 14 to 62. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it's quite an age range, and most people don't realize that. I didn't before I started this ministry. So I would say 14, which means there are a few women who start even earlier than 14. I have seen minors inside the strip clubs. I'm certain one night that I saw a girl who I would put at her oldest 14, but I would have said more like 12, which means that's probably a trafficking situation. But I think it's easy to do if you're 14 and you have a fairly dysfunctional family, an abusive family, and this guy comes along, and usually they're their peers. They're only a few years older. They're 17. And he promises you the world, and he treats you so much better than you've ever been treated, and has money, then you buy into that. And then before you know it, he's asking you to sleep with his friend Billy to pay the rent. And so you reluctantly do that. And that's a bigger case than not. That happens more often than not. So yes, you're exactly right. I think if I could come in, and even some of my colleagues come and speak to girls in middle school and guys in middle school also to
I
say
agree.
this is not appropriate and this is not how we should treat one another.
I agree. Now, I love the 12-minute video that you got, and especially if you have like daughters, junior high school daughters or high school daughters, you may want to sit down with them and watch this video I'm talking about of this lady named Teresa. In 1968, she was 15 years young. The thing is, if I was with Root 1 Ministry, I would have kind of suggested, why don't you go 5 minutes deeper in that video and tell exactly what happened
Sure.
with Teresa?
Yeah. Well, because the video is actually part of a thing called TED Talks. So it was a TED Talk, so they had a limit of how much time I
Okay.
had. When I do speak publicly, my outline is much longer. It's somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes, just to go in more detail about not just Teresa, but what is happening in the sex industry, and then as Christians, how we can respond to that, and even just anyone, right? Not just Christians, but just kind of the biblical narrative of where it's at. With Teresa, she does have a book. It's called The Slave Across the Street. Her name is Teresa Flores. And so her book's only 100 pages long. So if anyone's interested, I would highly recommend it. It is on Amazon. I think you can probably easily get it for $15 or less.
Have you actually met this woman?
I have met this woman. So I picked up her book, bought her book, but I bought it after meeting her. I heard her story. And she does get out. She only gets out, though, because her dad got relocated to a new state. So this trafficking took place in Michigan, in a suburb of Michigan. I know the suburb. It's a very wealthy white community. And then her dad gets relocated to another state, over in New England, actually. And then they move here. Otherwise, she probably would have been stuck in that system for a long time, maybe even to her death.
Now, this was a case where there was like a football player on the team, kind
Yeah.
of good-looking guy,
Yep.
and asked her to come in for a soda while he gets his football gear, and
Yep.
it was a little bit more intense than just giving her a soda while
Yep.
she was waiting for the football gear. Now, was her story just contained with him and his friends, or did she like get pregnant, go to?
I don't know about the pregnancy piece. I forget, that detail. She does have kiddos. She does have children. I don't know if those children came from life after, and she had healthy relationships with men, or if it was part of the sex trafficking situation. I do know, though, that it's definitely more than just him and his friends. So he picks her up, and at one point he takes her to a hotel room where there's 25 men waiting, and they all take their turn with her. And so she actually passes out, and she believes that's what saved her life, because she's pretty certain they thought she was dead. And then she gathers her clothes and makes her way to a 24-hour diner, so it's probably 2, 3 in the morning at this point. And the waitress is the first person to ask her, even though this has already been going on for a year and a half, her grades have gone down, she's dropped out of volleyball, so someone else should have noticed closer to her, a guidance counselor, her parents. But for whatever reason, this waitress says, "Do you need help?" and tells her that she should talk to the police. And then she tries, but the men who have been keeping her captive, basically they threaten her and they shoot her dog. And they say, the next time you go to the police, it'll be your family members. So this is holding her there, this fear, this shame, this I deserve this, how would anyone believe me? And so I think what's good about her story, or helpful with her story, and is her honesty to share it. And I appreciate Teresa being vulnerable and being able to publish her story, because I think a lot of times as Americans, we think of trafficking as happening over in another country, or we think of trafficking as women tied to a radiator or tied in a basement, which does happen, sadly. But Teresa wasn't tied up anywhere. She was held by what's going on in her mind and in her heart and in her understanding of self. And so I think, again, back to your point about middle school, we have to start teaching middle schoolers,
Amen.
Girls and boys both, that they're worth something because they're worth something, simply because they're human beings, not because of achievements or goals that they reach. Or if they do sleep with their boyfriend or girlfriend, it's not the end of the world, right? There's no need to carry around this shame, but there's people to talk to about it, and adults who want to hear what's going on in their life, who are trusted adults who can help process. So I think that's really important.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So if you want to get a hold of this Teresa's book, that's definitely a thing to check out on
Yes.
Amazon.com.
Yep.
So moving right along to the business of Route 1 ministry. Now, you approach your whole ministry of going to the management of these strip clubs and asking permission to sit down with these girls to talk with them for a few minutes and become their friends?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. So what we do is we have these little gifts, and it might be a bottle of nail polish, it might be a bottle of lotion or candles. We put them in little bags, and we tie a gift tag on there that says, "You are treasured." And then we bring those to various strip clubs and just ask to bring those in to the women. And the bouncers or the managers either say yes or no. And we bring them in, and at first, you only stay for a couple of minutes. But then as we get to know the women, we say hi to more women. We're able to hear more of their stories. Sometimes management has us just meet with the women on the floor. Like, they'll put us at a table and they'll tell the women that we're there. Or other times we're invited into the dressing room, and so we just hang out back there with the women and spend time with them the way that anyone else would hang out with a friend or spend time with them. And the truth is that at different points, it's been the management that's invited us in. It's been management that has made an announcement on those speakers. "Hey, girls, the church ladies are here tonight. Don't forget to come say hi to them." So I think throughout the industry, there is this idea that life could be better, but there's this unsureness of how to get to that place, right? And so
I would assume, though, since this is management's bread and butter, so to speak, because they don't want their girls to leave their
Yeah.
establishment or whatever. That's very few and far between of these women, of these clubs that you're allowed into.
yeah, I think it's interesting. Obviously, if we've been invited into all of them, then we would be in more. But the truth is, we don't go in to get the women out of the strip clubs. That's not our intent. That's not our agenda. We go in simply to show up and to bring gifts so that the women can feel loved and supported. And what happens after that is something more organic. Yeah.
Okay, and that's and then you visit these clubs that you are allowed to, like at least on a weekly basis or twice a week or
Weekly or bi-weekly. Yeah. Once a week or every other week.
oh, okay,
Yeah. Because
okay,
we also want to be respectful. It is a business.
correct.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that at one point I think a lot of like Christians and one thing, especially ones that like to use the gospel tract type thing.
Yeah.
More so, you think of like the Mormons and the Jehovah Witnesses, like shoving things down your throat. But your approach seems to become a friend to these women and try to, find their
Yeah.
common ground and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I have a lot more respect than some of these overzealous Christian types that, it sounds like they're trying to, go to Judgment Day. On the day they go to Judgment Day, they're trying to get brownie points from Jesus or something like that.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
that shouldn't be the case. Become their friend first, and then
Sure.
eventually they'll hopefully look at the light that you have, and say, what's this Jesus all about, or what's.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. I personally, I grew up in the church. I grew up in a Christian home, so it's a little different. But to be honest, the people that have really made a difference to me, that pushed me to want to seek Jesus more, to want to read my scripture more, to want to invest into a relationship with God, were people who took time to build a relationship with me. You know what I mean? And I got to be part of I think of my high school and middle school youth pastor. I was invited to their house for dinner. I got to play with their kids. They had me babysit, right? That's true relationship. And so that in their relationship showed me who Jesus was. And so for me, that's how I want to do this ministry. I also feel like I don't want to be arrogant, right? It's not my job to come in and assume that the women who work in the sex industry don't already know Jesus or haven't already been to church, and so I would rather come in and be able to hear more of their story and to build that relationship than assume where they need help or what they need help with by bringing in tracts or bringing in Bibles. I will say that we have had women ask us specifically to bring them a Bible.
Oh.
And so we do, right? When they ask, we bring a Bible. In fact, that just happened a couple weeks ago. A girl asked if we would bring her a Bible. And so we went out and bought one immediately and brought it to her. Other times we have lots of women who have asked if they can go to church with us. And so we say, yeah, sure, we'd love to. We either pick them up or give them directions. We've had women attend church picnics with us. And so we don't introduce ourselves as Route 1, and we don't introduce ourselves as church ladies. We just say we're women here to support you, and all of that is true. We have been called, though, church ladies across the board, no matter when. I have friends that do this in Wisconsin and friends that do this in Seattle, and everybody is called church ladies. So there is something to be said about that. And I think it comes down to the scripture that says, where the light is, the darkness has to flee. So I think there's something tangibly different about those who belong to Jesus,
Okay, one thing I got to ask you, especially like going into these places like once a week or once every other week or something like that, and you're not in the dressing room. You're right in where all the action is.
Yeah.
How do you and your colleagues handle guys who hit on you?
Yeah. That hardly ever has happened. I know that's odd, but maybe it's our own protection. Maybe we just don't notice because we're so focused on why we're there. Like, we're there to talk to the women, we're there to hang out with them. I have only had men hit on us a couple of times, or bouncers hit on us a couple of times. I think we try to navigate the conversation a different direction, or maybe bring it to an end so that we can move on to talking to the women. So actually it hasn't been that big of a problem or that big of an issue.
Did you ever have a situation, like getting back to management also and male customers, where they're interested in the gospel? If you say to them, we're affiliated with a church and we're here to, just talk to the ladies here and stuff like that. So, tell me a little bit about the gospel and what you're into, that type of thing. Because maybe it's God's will that, maybe you share the gospel with them. They definitely need the gospel.
With the men?
With the men, the male customers or the male owners.
Yeah, we don't actually. I mean, again, if they were to bring it up, which did happen, we've had different bouncers throughout. So we've been around about 6 years.
Okay.
And we've had bouncers at different points ask us questions about why we come and really want to get into it with us. And some of the volunteers have really taken that challenge and said, this is why we come, this is what we believe. And then we have, a couple weeks ago, a bouncer asked us to pray with him. So of course the volunteer said yes, and we did that, but we can't spend our time on the men. A couple of reasons. One, we're there for the women.
All
right. And if we're talking to the managers, if we're talking to the bouncers, the women are not going to come over and talk with us and hang out with us, right? That's their job, and so they want a little break from that. The other thing that's been a huge breakthrough, especially when we're in the strip clubs in Western Mass, is that we're allowed into the dressing room. So we have more conversation with women and see less and less clients. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's just food for thought. I was just wondering how that would work out. But that's as long as you keep your perspective and they keep their perspective, and
yeah, and I try to be respectful, of everyone, but yeah.
Okay. Let's see. And we talked before earlier. I know we talked on the phone about this interview and stuff like that. And I know myself, if I was to get involved with Route 1 ministry, I would definitely have a problem.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, looking at women who've had, if they're going to be women who work in strip clubs, they've got to be attractive, or else they're not going to make the tips, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I'm working with them and stuff like that, and I would have trouble keeping my focus on, trying to lead them to Jesus or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And if I tried dating them and stuff like that, or going out with me or something like that, mm-hmm. that'd probably be the worst thing in the world. Mm-hmm. in their particular situation. So do you recommend men who want to help out with Route 1 ministry to do it financially or prayerfully or some other thing other than direct face-to-face contact with these women?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think a couple of things with the women. I think that the women are very beautiful.
Yeah.
But also, the women are, again, 14 to 62 years old. So a lot of the women are not beautiful in the traditional sense that you would think. So there's not, some of them are young 20, college-age students, but a lot of them have C-section scars or are heavier women or are women who have dried ends on their hair or, they're just everyday women as well, which is fine. But they're not the sex goddesses that shows like striptease have made them out to be. So that's one part. A lot of the women suffer from addiction to drugs, so they also have lines on their arms from where they've done drugs. It's very prominent, even in the strip club. So it's an interesting, again, just an overly sexually charged atmosphere. But I think for that reason, no, I don't take men in with us on our team. I know other ministries that do have men go into female strip clubs, but I think it's best if it's women in that atmosphere going in and ministering to women.
Amen.
I think it's very tricky and dangerous to have men go in. And yeah, men can definitely support us financially. Everything that we do is fundraising. We're a nonprofit, so the only reason we are able to move forward and able to serve the women that we do and can keep doing that is when churches and individuals partner with us financially. My web designer is a man, so that's another way that men can partner with us.
Definitely.
I have an administrative assistant who's also a man. So in that way, there's a lot of other volunteer opportunities behind the scenes, like getting the outreach gifts ready. We could use a group of men to come and package up all these outreach gifts to take into the clubs. That's huge. That's very important to the ministry. So, yep, there's lots of things that men can do and can do them behind the scenes. They can be advocate speakers. That's another way to influence bringing this to an end, bringing exploitation to an end. So, yeah.
Okay, we've got a couple minutes left before
Okay.
our break here. But one thing about, what was I going to say? If you have one of these strippers that, want to come in and, go to church and want to go
Yep.
cold turkey from the sex trafficking industry, would you recommend that they lay off relationships with men for like 6 months to a year to get to know the Lord?
Yeah.
Prayer, ask, God, show me a sign, go to church and pray that the minister will give them a message somehow, some way to deliver them. Just spend like 6 months to a year to get to know God. And then, after that, if they want to have relationships with men and start dating and stuff like that, fantastic. But it just seems that they're callous. They're at a state where they're very calloused and hard-hearted after doing the stripping thing, trying to appease men they're not attracted to. They have nothing in common with, well, at least most of them. And they would have a very warped, demented sense of relationship, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would use the word callous, but I would definitely use the word like they've had to make themselves numb in the situation. They definitely don't like all of their clients, and so, but they do it as like, this is my job. So I would think, yes, you would want some kind of transitional period where you're learning new healthy behaviors. May that be a break from men, a break from drugs, a break from staying up late at night. I know a lot of women who, once they leave the sex industry, maybe they take a job waitressing, but they go ahead and move states even so that they can cut themselves off fully from this life and get a new name and really make a fresh break and a starting over point. But yeah,
Okay.
so we have helped women who were ready to exit or thinking about exit, whatever that first step might look like to them. For some women, they're not interested in dating men at all because they've been so hurt and so abused.
Yeah.
So the first step might be just getting them into a healthy community, right?
Amen,
Or connecting them to an AA group, or letting them see what it's like to have healthy friendships with girlfriends first, right? So yeah, a lot of what you just said is true. In the ideal world, if a woman was to ask me, hey, what are the 5 steps I should take to step into a healthy relationship with Jesus, I would say, if you could break fully from what your life looks like now, right, into doing something different, that would be ideal.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, so anyway, we need to pause for the cause here, go to
Okay.
one of our public service announcements, and
Okay.
hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you will be back. You'll be back with us in 1 minute for another more to, on Frankly Speaking. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Clark, and I'm the Executive Director for Amira. We're a faith-based nonprofit in the North Shore of Boston that provides a refuge and safe home for women that were sex trafficked. I know what you're thinking, sex trafficking, like that happens over in India or Cambodia, right? Well, actually, it's something that happens right here in New England. And the majority of women that are being trafficked grew up right here in New England themselves. And so what we do is we come in and we provide whole person care, helping them to break free from exploitation on their journey to liberation. We would love for you to engage with us about this topic. It's huge, and we need all the help that we can get. So you see our website right below me, www.amiraboston.org. Please go there, begin to check out what we do, and begin to see that you can actually become a partner with us in this incredible work. We also have a fundraiser coming up on Saturday, April 9th at the Ipswich Country Club in Ipswich, Massachusetts from 10 to noon. It's a brunch. There'll be incredible voices of hope there. A local survivor will be sharing a bit of her story. So we hope that you can join us for that great event. Again, we're Amira. We're a faith-based nonprofit that helps women that are sex trafficked. And we need you to partner with us in order to continue this great work. Thank you so much.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our break. We just paused for the cause there. And we're talking to my guest here, Bonnie Gatchell. She's the director of Route 1 Ministry, which helps fight sex trafficking, specifically when it comes to girls who work in strip clubs. And you mentioned in one of your brochures here that there's a couple of myths surrounding strippers, like, let's see, it gives them a way to be sexy, a way to have a lot of fun, make a ton of money, and easily have enough money to support their way through college. Mm-hmm. So do you think that our society as a whole now kind of puts that type of stuff on a pedestal, sexiness and, having women out there and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think society has always, and we wouldn't use the word sexy in the 60s, right?
Okay.
But there is this like seductiveness that's kind of the unforbidden fruit, or the forbidden fruit, I mean. Even if you were to think, not to be totally biblical nerdy, but if you think about Judah, he knew where to find a prostitute. So his daughter-in-law, Tamar, she dresses up as a prostitute, and he knows what that looks like, and he's a leader of the land. And he then has sex with her, and she gets pregnant, and the story goes on, and it's revealed. So there's this, seems to be, even since the Old Testament, this idea of there's your wife, and then there's this mistress or forbidden fruit, or the person that you're passionate with, right? And all of that's a misconception, right? And none of that is biblical, right? God says in Genesis that he creates male and female in his image. And so we're always to be thinking of the other as image bearers, And so, yeah, I think there's this tendency due to the fall to work against each gender, right, each other. And so I think in particular, women are put onto pedestals when they can be the sexiest, right, or the most passionate, or super hot, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's been a thing throughout time, not just 2016.
I agree. Okay, so for example, women who get breast implants, is there a downside to that, like when they get older, or that's just making them more attractive supposedly to men? Does that help them, or put like an extra weight on their bodies, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a medical expert, but I would assume if you're adding weight to a very condensed particular area of your body, that it's then going to reflect on the rest of you. I mean, I think if you think the reverse, right? People who have had to have things amputated, they have to readjust for the balance, for the loss of weight. So I would assume if you're adding weight, that you would have to adjust.
I heard somewhere, I don't know if they're not made out of silicone or what the substance is, that sometimes there's leakage problems in that implants or something like that.
Again, I don't know anything about implants, but I do know that there is the increased risk of breast cancer for women who receive implants.
Okay.
Because of the material used. And maybe that is getting better every day with medical science. They're increasing what they can and can't do. It's pretty impressive what they can or cannot do. But yeah, that is definitely not my field or my expertise.
Okay, and what about Karen Carpenter? Well, Karen Carpenter is probably a little bit before your time. I know I'm a little bit older than you, but anorexic nervosa. Are there any girls that kind of eat a lot and then puke themselves out that are in the sex industry just to look attractive and
Yeah,
good
I think so. I think that anorexia and bulimia again haunts all women in all parts of life. I mean, not that all women wrestle with anorexia, but I think it's everywhere, right? So there's certainly women in the church who suffer from anorexia and bulimia. There was a pretty well-known nun even in the 13th century who died of anorexia. She died of 36 because she just stopped eating. She just wouldn't eat. And so it would be very tempting if your job is to look good to then do that even more. But again, yeah, so I do think it's definitely there. And I think the other way that they combat weight gain in the sex industry is not every woman, but again through drug use as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that drugs are also prevalent, like cocaine, heroin, especially. I would think that women who do that like a couple dozen times a night, day after day, week after week, month after month, sometimes year after year, lose their dignity, and they need to lose reality a little bit, so they get high on cocaine and heroin or whatever.
Yeah, I guess again, I wouldn't say they lose their dignity, but they might feel like they have. They definitely feel this sense of shame. I think a big use, the first number one use is alcohol. Part of their job is selling alcohol, right? They want the clients to buy more alcohol so that the tab goes up bigger. So the best way to sell alcohol is to drink it, right?
Okay.
I think I've heard from numerous women in the strip clubs how they did a shot of alcohol before they started work. Maybe they would have a quick glass of wine or beer or tequila just to take the edge off, just to be able to enter the workplace. I once heard a girl told me how she had been sober off of alcohol for 10 years, and then for whatever reason, she came back to the sex industry, came back to working at the strip club, and she said to me, well, I did have to drink a little to get back into this. So there is this sense of taking the edge off or forgetting what you're doing, becoming numb. I think a bigger drug of choice after alcohol is pot. I see that way more than anything else. It leaves the least amount of evidence that it's been there, you know, and it works the fastest, I think. It's the cheapest. I'm fairly ignorant when it comes to drugs. But there is, I have seen heroin being shut up. I have seen evidence of cocaine, maybe not right in the clubs, but in relation to it, or the women, because we've been invited to women's homes as well. So just kind of there. I think with the sex industry, with strip clubs being legal, there's an opportunity to hide a lot of illegal activity. So a lot of things are hidden inside the strip clubs. Prostitution happens in the strip clubs, or at least men have asked women to come to hotels with them. I think there's drug use that's hidden in the strip clubs, drug dealing that happens in the strip clubs, and then of course the selling of minors, which is illegal. There was a strip club.
I would assume managers and bouncers get to exploit strippers like on the side as part of their fringe benefits.
They do. I think that 80% of women, according to a researcher named Melissa Farley, 80% of women have reported being sexually abused or raped or penetrated with foreign objects by either clients, managers, or owners. So it happens all the time, and I saw it in one strip club. We walked into the dressing room. A girl was completely nude, and the manager was giving her a full-body massage. I just can't imagine showing up to the workplace and my manager telling me this is what's going to happen today.
Yeah.
You know? So there's a lot of things. The women have to pay to be there. They have to pay a fee to take off their clothes. Sometimes it's a big fee of $75 on the weekends. A lot of the clubs make them pay that. Throughout the week, they pay a fee off the top. They have to pay the DJ to play music, the bouncers to protect them, the managers to do their jobs. So it's this awful little gimmick that somehow sucks women in and makes them believe that they're about to break it big when they're not. They're actually on the edge of falling off instead of breaking it big.
Okay. I'm a big fan of investigation discovery, and I think there's one called Escape, a new one that's
Okay.
real life crime stuff.
Yep.
Stalking. I would assume that's a stalker's paradise.
Yep.
They get off at 2, 3 in the morning.
Yep.
And usually by themselves, either going to the car or going to a subway station or something
Yep.
like that.
Yeah, that's true. Women are sometimes stalked and then eventually murdered. They've been cut with potato peelers, just as a way of a man being frustrated and marking them. That's why often I would have to say actually the bouncers who work in the strip clubs play a big role in protecting these women. And they also protect us when we come in. They've stood right at our table before to make sure everything was okay. And so often if we're there at a shift, a job shift, then you'll see bouncers walking women out from time to time and walking them all the way to their car if they notice a man that's been hanging out a little longer or a little leery. The men do. I mean, so I always say, no little girl wants to be a stripper when she grows up. And I would also say, no little boy wants to buy sex when he grows up, right?
Amen.
He wants to be nurtured. He wants to be loved. He wants that companionship. And something is broken in both of their lives, right, for this to take place, this brokenness of either abuse or sin or neglect or whatever it may be. And so the men who go into strip clubs are not healthy either. They
Amen.
are buying sex. And
Amen.
so they get this idea that the women who are talking to them are really their girlfriends. But there's some kind of unhealthy disconnect, some kind of brokenness, just like in each of our lives, you know.
And last but by no means least, voyeurism. So you get a cell phone, and the
Sure.
cell phone has, you can take a video, you can take photographs with
Yep.
it. How does the girls know, the strippers, when they're doing their acts and their pole act thing or whatever, know if I'm talking on the phone, I'm checking out
Sure.
sports scores, or I'm taking a video of them while they're dancing?
Yep. And that happens. That definitely happens in the day and age that we're in. Some clubs.
And then it gets posted on porn
Yep.
sites.
Yep. Some clubs manage that by not letting clients bring in their cell phones. They have to leave them at the door or show
Oh.
that they're off. Other clubs, the bouncers, again, are really great at watching the clients. And if a phone's out a little longer than a phone call, they'll go over and ask them to put it away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're right. The thing is this is high vulnerability for the women. That's why it's wrong. They are one gender, maybe a male strip club or a female strip club. One gender is completely taking off all their clothes, quite literally being vulnerable, being open. And the other gender holds all the cards. They're completely dressed. They're in the comfortable seat. They're pulling out money that's going to be this person's formula money or food money or college money. So like completely, this gender is completely dependent on the other gender for their livelihood. That's a wrong. That's a misuse, right, of what God intended.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've just been told by my producer we have a couple minutes left.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of subjects we didn't cover, but can you wrap this up and maybe say something you want to elaborate on, or something we did not bring up, which is quite a bit, for the last couple of minutes here?
Well, actually, if you have one other question that we didn't get to that you really would
Oh,
like
okay.
to ask.
I was going to ask. Well, I know, like Stephanie Clark, when
Yep.
she was here, she
Yep.
told me that Amira has like programs for these girls, like English as a second language,
Sure.
childcare, GED courses, and stuff
Yep.
like that, helping these women. Does Route One Ministry also have that offer?
Yeah.
These women who want to get out, leave the sex trafficking industry?
Yep. So a lot of what we do, again, is relational. So we do that relationally. Again, we've had women ask us to come to their house to pray over their house and children for them, come to their kids' birthday parties. We've sat at DTA offices with them to fill out applications for child care vouchers and food stamps and employment. We've helped them do job search and narrow down their skill sets. So we do, yes, we work a little differently. We do supply free ESL tutoring, but all of the work we do is more one-on-one mentoring. And then where it's above our pay grade, per se, professional counseling, long-term rehab, that's where we have great resources that we're connected to, where we can send people to or advise women on going. And we ourselves, the volunteers, a wonderful volunteer drove a woman to AA once and went with her multiple weeks in a row, just to be that encouragement, just to be that person sitting beside her. So that's how we work a lot of times in connecting women to resources.
Okay.
Does that help answer your question?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, I hate to eat, drink, and run, but time flies when you're having fun. Bonnie, it's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And we'll definitely pray. And if you want to financially contribute, if this has been a blessing or something you want to learn more about, definitely log on to lovebyroute1.org.
Yep.
And just check it out for yourselves. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, please join us again for Frankly Speaking. Thank you very much, and God bless.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.